All right, so next we're going to talk about how to level up your food without tracking long term. So first we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can basically do it without tracking, and then we're going to talk about some of the benefits of actually tracking. So the reason that tracking even works is because it builds awareness. It kind of tells you what you're eating, how much you're eating, and then you are a little bit more strategic about the way that you eat things. And sometimes you don't want to write something down, so you don't eat it, right? Like that's totally a thing. And that's a little bit better probably than lying about not eating it. So just make sure that you are really building that awareness when you're tracking, because that's the whole point, right? Is be able to figure out what portion sizes look like, what a serving of foods look like. So we'll go through some label reading in a little bit too to help you out with that. So some of the ways that we can be flexible without actually having to track formally is that we can actually use our hands and different shapes of our hands to be able to kind of build awareness around what we're eating. So the palm itself is 4 to 6-ish ounces of meat or a protein. So that's a really great way to think about, where's my hand? There we go. Of the palm itself, that's about what your serving size should look like for your meat. Now, I don't know about you, but our serving sizes for our meats definitely looked bigger than that at one point in time. And then one of the things that we did was we ended up doing some, I think it was Fit Factor. Factor is the one. So we started doing some of those mail order meal prep guides. And they had what I thought was really low portions when I first started eating them. And then I realized that they were perfect. I was perfectly content at the end of it. And so even though it looked like this little palm-based patty, it actually ended up being a perfect amount of food. And that helped us realize and check back in with the fact that our portion sizes were bigger than they needed to be. And that I felt totally satisfied off of having what would be a normal portion. So that's something to keep in mind too. For any type of veggies or anything like that, about a fistful is going to be about a cup. So that's what we're looking for when we're eating veggies, is about a cup. And then a cupped hand, also about a cup, that's going to be for carbs. And then thumb is about an ounce, that's for your fats. So there's different ways for you to be able to do it, but just think palms, veggies, carbs, and then thumbs. And then on the plate itself, if you can have about half of your plate be some type of veggie, that would be awesome. One thing that I really like to do is actually like to incorporate it in the foods that we're eating, so I don't feel like I'm just eating a plate full of veggies. So like I said, sometimes I'll actually like just double the vegetables in the recipe itself, or I'll just add a couple extra veggies in there to make them really veggie heavy, because I'm one of those people, I know there's people that don't like their food to touch at all. I'm one of those people that I like mix it all together. And so I would rather have it be together and feel more like a casserole, I guess, to be able to have the flavors complement each other. So that's typically how I do it, instead of having like different portions in our plate. Eating enough is better than eating perfect. Now, I say this again because we talked about before how some people aren't eating enough protein, or some people just simply aren't eating enough. We know that we need the food in order to be able to support all of our activities and, again, our muscle building, which is going to help us in the long run. So if you are choosing between eating something that might not have as much nutrients as you'd like it to, or eating nothing, eat the damn thing. Like I've told so many of my clients this, like that's totally fine. If that's the only option that you have right now, okay, try to prepare better next time, but eat it, right? It is better to be eating something than nothing, and then continue to try and make it easier for yourself to make better options. But we really want to make sure that we are not under fueling like we talked about last time, because it's going to be really important to make sure that we're supporting all of the goals that we have. So things that when we are not eating enough, you might have low energy, constant fatigue, cravings can be worse, which will make you eat more later. And your hunger cravings are either going to be off the chart, or they're going to be completely wrong because you're not feeding your body the way that you should be. It doesn't help with your recovery. It can make you have mood swings or be irritable. Like I said, I'm not pretty when I'm hangry. And so I'm sure that some of you are the same way. And it can help, or it can also make you burn out. Like if you are trying to just pull from your calories and eat less, you're probably going to burn out really quickly, and you're not going to want to do that long term, right? And our ultimate goal for whatever we decide for our food is something that we can sustain long term. So we want to make sure that we're not burning ourselves out. We're not starving ourselves. We are living in abundance. We're trying to eat food. We're trying to add food, right? That's my biggest thing. And remember that imperfect consistency beats perfect extremes every time. So it is all about making better choices and continuing those choices and making sure that we are continuing to support our body. So next piece is thinking again about body recomposition. To revisit that term, gaining more muscle, losing more body fat over weight loss. Now, the reason I say this is if we're focusing on weight loss, we're probably focusing on cardio predominantly. We just talked about how exercise is only 5 to 10% of your burned calories. So why would you just burn yourself out on cardio? Like it's barely even making a dent, right? So that's one piece. The second piece is that when you're focusing only on weight loss, a lot of people think it's better to eat less. But realistically speaking, the less that you eat, the more that you pull away from yourself, especially if you get lower than your basal metabolic rate, which is that 60% of your total daily energy expenditure. If you get below that, your body starts to hold onto fat because it's like in survival mode. It's like, I cannot sustain the activity that I need to do based off the calories that you're giving me. So we're going to hold on to as much of it as possible. So it actually ends up being a negative. It actually ends up negating what you're trying to do by cutting those calories. And not only that, but it actually damages your metabolic system, your metabolism long term. So you really have to be careful about the way that you work up from that. I'm not going to lean too much into it right now, but there is a way to be able to get your metabolism to get back up to par. It's called reverse dieting, and it's something that a lot of bodybuilders actually use after their shows. So that's something that I've worked through with a lot of my clients too, is starting to be able to get your metabolism functioning properly so that we can actually add to your calories. Because again, I love food. My goal is to be able to get to be able to eat as many calories as I want to, as I can, right? And so that's kind of our goal, is that abundance piece. We want to make sure that your system works for you and that it's supporting everything that we're doing. So that's really important. Strength training, as we talked about, putting muscles on is super duper important for preserving that metabolism. Making sure that we have balanced nutrition, including an adequate amount of protein and calories, is going to help us build that muscle and, bonus, lose fat. There used to be this idea that if you had extra calories, there was no way for you to lose fat. Now, that's not completely untrue. But with that being said, if we are at the right amount of calories where we're able to support our muscle building, then we already know that that's going to pull some of that fat off anyway, right? So realistically, that's my favorite way to do it. How much can we eat, right? How can we get to that nice balance point so that we can pull all that fat away and gain muscle? I'm just saying. And that itself, not only just feeling better from being stronger, being more capable, being less tired, but that itself takes the focus away from the scale number. It is not the only important number. It is the most common number and probably the most accessible number, but it is not the most important number by any stretch of the imagination. So really think about a different way to approach this. It is not about what my number on the scale is. I am not trying to shrink, right? I do not want to be able to fit into somebody else's definition. I want to be as big as possible, take up as much room as possible, be strong, feel good, be a positive personality. That's what we're looking for. We want to be big. We want to be abundant. So please think about this a little bit differently. What can we do and what can we add instead of what can we take away? Macros. For this, if you want to get a good idea of what you're eating without actually tracking, I get it, it's a little annoying, but if you want to do that, there are a few things that you need to do. You need to make sure that you are eating all 3 macros most of the meals of the day. If you're able to prioritize protein for breakfast and for snacks, that is a really great way to be able to make sure that you're getting enough protein throughout the day. And then just making sure that there's hopefully at least 1 veggie or 1 serving of veggies per major meal is going to be a really great start. Again, prioritizing the protein and then starting to adjust that based on your feelings. Now, we'll talk about intuitive eating a little bit more. Sometimes your feelings are not going to be accurate yet, so we want to make sure that we're a little bit careful about that. But as you start to read your body, you're going to be able to start to know a little bit more of what it's asking for, and that's when you can start listening. Remember that all calories are not created equal. So I know these pictures are reversed, but 300 calories of a donut is going to digest into your system quickly, cause your blood sugar to spike, It's low volume, so it's going to leave you hungry. It doesn't have a ton of nutrients. It's very nutrient void. It doesn't have a lot of protein. It's basically just straight sugar carbs, so it's just going to go straight to your system. And it does not have a lot of fiber for your digestion. Where on the other side, if we were to eat something that actually has volume, actually has protein in it, so in this case, eggs and veggies, it's going to release slower in your system. So your blood sugar is going to be more even. It's going to have higher volume, so it's going to keep you fuller longer. It's richer in vitamins, minerals, and protein, and it has fiber for healthy digestion. So these are the types of swaps that we want to make sure that we're doing more often than not. Next, we're going to go into how to read labels. Now, this label itself doesn't actually have the ingredients at the bottom, but typically underneath the nutrition facts is where you're going to find the ingredients. A couple things that we want to look for is minimal ingredients if possible. There are absolutely exceptions. So like I just mentioned, some of the salad boxes that I had 14 different types of lettuce in it, but they're like lettuce, right? So it's okay that there's 14 of them because they're all plants. So it's not always like a one for one, but with that being said, something that has more ingredients in it typically ends up being more processed. And our goal is to get away from eating as much processed food more often. So look at the ingredients. We want them to be things that you can read, that you recognize, that look like actual foods if possible. And then we want to make sure that there are not a ton of additives and stuff like that, which a lot of shelf-stable products have nowadays. So that's really a little crazy and scary. Something to really take a look at is what is actually contained in that food itself. Because if you're eating a bunch of like super not natural chemicals, sometimes your body's not going to know what to do with that, or it's going to feed, like we said, those negative bacteria in your body. Next is checking the serving sizes. So this is something that comes to us, I think, a lot of people as a surprise the first couple times, because it seems like something in a small package should be one serving, right? But a lot of times it's not. Even just like a candy bar, a lot of times will be like 2 or 3 servings or something like that. So we want to see how many servings are per container and then what a serving size is. The reason the serving size exists is that's approximately how much you should be eating, right? One of my favorite examples of this is cereal. I would put like a big bowl, not even like a little bowl, like a big bowl of cereal together, right? And eat that, no problem, whatever. A normal serving size of a bowl of cereal is 3/4 of a cup. Remember how we just talked about this was like a cup, an open palm? So 3/4 of a cup is like this. So that's how much cereal you're gonna eat. Like, that's crazy, right? That's nothing. I was at least eating 2 or 3 times that easily, right? So we want to look at the back of that package and make sure that we are, as much as we can, trying to eat about 1 serving, or if we're not, if we're eating, let's say 2 servings, just to make it super simple math, that we're taking all of these nutrition facts on the back and we're doubling them, because realistically, that's what you're actually eating, right? So we know that the calories are at the top. I think that's something that everyone's familiar with. And then basically the way that they did this picture is all the red stuff is stuff that we want to try to limit. Saturated fats, like we talked about before, sodium. The main reason for sodium, we do still need it in our system, is that a lot of processed foods have extra sodium in them. So this one only has 160 milligrams, which is 7% of your daily value. Not too bad, right? If you were to look in the frozen food section, that is one of the worst culprits for having a ton of sodium. And it's because it helps make things more shelf stable. So remember, like back in like Egypt days, they used to just put fish on salt, basically. Yeah, that's before they had fridges. But basically that's what they do to a lot of the frozen foods, is they pump it full of sodium so that 1, it tastes better because sodium enhances taste, and 2, it ends up being more shelf stable and it can stay in the freezer longer. So that's something to really keep your eyes on, is that sodium number, because a lot of times it's going to end up being a little crazy. One of my clients was just talking about, he had like a macaroni salad or something like that. And it was a frozen version. And it was something that he, instead of eating it as a side for his food, he was just eating the whole thing. We're like, okay, let's look at the ingredients on the back. So it turns out that he was eating like 4, maybe 6 servings in one sitting. And that one serving had like 1,000 milligrams, something crazy. So basically he was eating like 3,000 milligrams of sodium in one sitting because he hadn't looked at the ingredients and didn't realize that it was so high. right? So he made that adjustment and started making it a side instead of made it his whole meal. And that's, again, making the world of a difference. So that's something to keep in mind. We know about the carbs, proteins, and fats. That's totally fine. Those are all of our normal macro ingredients, and we know that we need to pick it depending on what we are looking for and what the purpose of that meal is. Next is going to be dietary fiber. Oh, excuse me, one more red one. Added sugars. So I think it's 60%, something like that, of products on the shelf actually have added sugars in them now, which is, it might even be a higher number than that, which is pretty ridiculous to think that that many things have added sugar in them, but it's super duper common nowadays, which is pretty crazy. So the lower that number, the better. Like I mentioned before, my nut butter bars, I think they have like 14 grams of sugar. So it is a little bit high. With that being said, I wanted it to be a little bit higher in sugar and super simple carbs because I use it pre-workout. So it's okay every once in a while. We do want to try to reduce it as much as possible. So some of the ones that, if you've done any of my challenges before, or if you've done Building University, then you know one of the challenges that we try to do is to take out added sugars. Now that is not to take out added sugars for the rest of your life, because that's crazy. It's super hard to be able to avoid, unfortunately. But what it is designed to do is to build your awareness around how many things have added sugar and how much added sugar is in everything that we're eating. It's crazy. So to keep that in mind, added sugar. So now we'll go into the green category. Dietary fiber. We already know the positive or the benefits of fiber, so that's a huge one. And then the bottom part is just going to be your vitamins and minerals. Now, small asterisk, technically in food, this isn't going to happen a lot. If you are looking for a vitamin, like especially a multivitamin or something like that, we want those vitamins to actually be, not in a food again, in a vitamin itself, about 100%. A lot of those vitamin supplements will give you like thousands of percents, which is crazy. You don't need that much, and it can actually be really negative to your diet or to your body itself. So I think it's vitamins or minerals. I want to say it's vitamins. You can actually get vitamin poisoning. So look at your multivitamin, make sure that it's about 100%, not thousands of percents or 300 or whatever craziness. And we won't dive too much into that, but that's something to keep in mind. When it comes to food, generally speaking, the higher the better. So that's something that we want to look at too. So we looked at our ingredients, we looked at our serving sizes, scanned for sugar, and then considered our protein and fiber. That's the main things that we want to look at when we're looking at a label. Smart swaps. So we've already talked about some of these, so I'm not going to dive too much into it. But again, our goal is to try and pick something that is more nutrient dense, higher fiber, more of a plant, looks more like a whole food, has more water in it. Whatever that version is, those are where we want to make those substitutions. We talked about how a high protein breakfast can actually help with your better energy and better glucose levels throughout the day. If you start your day with something sugary like a muffin, oh, here we go. This is one that a lot of people do. Pancakes. Go to IHOP and get a whole stack of pancakes with some maple syrup on there and maybe some berries or something like that. Like that is a sugar overload. And when you do that, you're essentially ruining your system for the rest of the day because it's really hard for it to catch back up because it has this huge blood glucose spike and then it crashes down. So your energy's gone for the day, you're exhausted. I don't know if you guys have ever felt this before. You can just kind of crash and then you just kind of feel crappy the rest of the day because you can't make up for it. So that's where we want to make sure that our breakfast especially is going to be really protein rich, and then it's going to be a little bit lower, especially in those simple carbs and the sugars and stuff like that. So one of my favorite breakfasts for a really long time was chicken and waffles. So that's like breading on chicken, waffles, syrup, probably some butter, maybe even some, like I said, fruit on there. And yeah, basically just a carb overload. And so I have kind of stopped actually ordering that, even though that was one of my favorite breakfasts, because I realized that it wasn't going to make me feel better afterwards. So sorry, not sorry. Try to start with protein if you can, and try to minimize your simple carbs as much as possible. Real life wins. This is where we're going to start to see the difference. You're going to go to the grocery store and start to realize that you're gravitating towards those whole food options. When it comes to navigating the store, a lot of times the perimeter is going to be a little bit safer, I guess you can say, right? Because then we know that the produce is on one side, the deli is on the other. It's that middle section and the aisles that they have right before they're about to check you out that are going to be the huge temptations. Going with a list is really helpful so that you're targeted, you know what you're going to get. And One of my clients says that he doesn't believe this, but I do. I am much more impulsive when I'm hungry. So if you are going to the grocery store, try to eat beforehand so that you are not going to just pull a bunch of stuff because you're hungry and then you end up being a little bit more impulsive and picking stuff that you wouldn't normally pick. Go to the store with a plan. Make sure that you're getting the foods that you want to get, but you're going to notice the more often that you do that, the more often you want to do that. And you're going to start gravitating toward that as an option. Eating out. When you're eating out, if you start to learn how to be able to see what your portion sizes are, that's a really great way for you to be able to make sure that you're eating the right amount without necessarily tracking or weighing or anything like that, right? So those hand portions come in handy there. Also being able to just visually see it. One of the cool tricks that I wanted to adopt, I thought it was so cool and then I messed it up, is when you first order your food, almost every restaurant gives you like way too much food, right? So when you first order your food, you try to have them put half of it in a box, like a to-go box. And so I did that one time and I was super excited about it. I was like, oh, this is gonna be the perfect amount of food. I'm gonna feel so good afterwards, whatever. And then I left my leftovers at the store or at the restaurant and I was so sad about it. And plus money, right? That's half of my money. So I haven't done that since. But with that being said, you don't have to finish what's on your plate either, right? You can eat part of it and take some of it home. That's totally fine. Or you can eat part of it and not take some of it home. That's totally fine too. So keep in mind, a lot of restaurants are going to feed you more than what a normal portion size is. And the more that you start to get in tune with your body and realize that you feel better when you're only eating one portion size, the more that you're going to be able to make those decisions a little bit smarter as well. In daily life, we know that you're going to have more consistent energy levels. We know that you're going to have better recovery. And then again, with the mental clarity, you don't have to stress as much because now you know what the better option is. You know the foods that you eat and the types of things that you want to make sure that you're putting in your diet. And it really helps you not have to think as much about that food noise. If you guys have heard that, like all of the advertisements around. Like nowadays, I don't really even think about going to a fast food restaurant. So like I almost ignore it, right? You just drive past it and you don't even realize it's there anymore because it's not a temptation. It's not something that I want to do anymore. But that came with like years of practice, right? That came with me going through the FOMO and feeling like I was missing out and like I wasn't eating what I wanted to eat. And then I realized later, I didn't want to eat it. It didn't feel good. It didn't make my body feel good. And I just didn't want it anymore, right? So you start to see those changes happen. And that's really, really cool to see in the long term as well. That's one of the things that one of my clients told me too, is she was like, I just don't want the desserts anymore. I don't want the soda anymore. Like I just don't feel like I need it. And that desire is not there anymore. So it's really cool to see that transition. And again, your takeaway, you do not have to track forever. It is a very helpful tool for building awareness. But the ultimate goal is not to track, right? Because realistically speaking, who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. You probably don't want to do that. And you can totally use it as long as you want to, right? I do think it's a really great way to build awareness. I actually have a client who's like on 3 or 4 years of tracking her food, which I'm so impressed about. And if you want to, you're more than welcome to do so. But realistically, it is an extra step that you have to do. So like if you can figure out how to listen to your body instead and figure out what it needs, that's going to end up being more beneficial in the long run. So ask yourself whenever you're eating something, 1, is this meal balanced? Do I have the different macronutrients that I need? And 2, what nutrient value am I getting out of this? My chicken and waffles and syrup, the answer was basically none, right? Okay, maybe a little bit of protein from the chicken, but that's about it, right? So is there a plant in it? What nutrients am I getting it from it? Where are the vitamins? Where are the minerals? Is this going to benefit me in the long run? So those are things that we're thinking about, making small and consistent upgrades, and those are going to really compound on top